Hello, and welcome along to the stream tonight. So, first of all, if there's anybody out there who was watching along with the stream last week, I would like to say we had a bit of fun, but we didn't really. We spent almost all of the night fighting with either Azure or Azure DevOps. Hey Nils, how's it going? But I am happy to say that since that stream, I have got things working. So what you're looking at now is the deployed version of the sample application that I unashamedly stole from Mads Christensen, and it is now running in Azure. So you should be able to, if you wanted to, I'll grab this and I'll put it into the chat here. You should, in theory, hey Maurice, how's it going? You should, in theory, be able to open it up and you should be able to go to it. Now, there's very little here, but I wanted to quickly walk through. I did see your amazing debacle. Debacle? Or I'm not sure I follow what you're saying there, but I'm assuming you'll follow up with another comment. Fun? No, last week was not fun at all. No, it was. I had nightmares. So what I wanted to do quickly was I wanted to quickly go through. It was fun to watch. Well, it wasn't fun for me, Maurice. I'm glad you enjoyed it though. Hey, Phil, how's it going? So what I wanted to do, and Genoxide, hello to you too. What I wanted to do was I wanted to quickly go through what was and wasn't working last week, what I did to get it working, where the site is now, and where I want to go next. So, let's start at the beginning. So one of the first things that we kind of fought with was that in my Azure portal, could be worse, could be having a dying USB hub on your Mac. Oh, that was the week before, wasn't it? I can't remember. They all merge into one. So one of the first things that we found, or we fought with last time, was that when I came into my portal, my Azure subscription seemed to be tied to Mateus's or dev lead's Active Directory, or Azure Active Directory, and my one was nowhere to be seen. So on the Thursday of last week, I sat down with on the phone to Mateus, and we figured it out. So basically, we created a new Azure Active Directory instance, this one here, and then we moved my subscription over to use that one. Now that was a little bit of a heart-wrenching moment when I clicked the button on moving the resource groups or moving the subscription into the other Active Directory, and everything went away. But I'm happy to say that it all came back, and what I've got now is my Azure portal signed in as me. I have my own Azure Active Directory, and all of the subscriptions, and therefore all of the resource groups within that subscription, are now all under my stuff. So everything's what it should be. Hey Augusto, did the phone survive? I sat down on the phone. I don't remember that bit. So that was the first part of the issues that we had. The next part was we set up GitHub Actions. So if we go over to github.com/get13/oss/glatrips. So we went in to create a workflow, and that workflow did the build and the deployment into our new Azure App Service. And it built, it deployed, it seemed to be working, but every time we went to the website, it would just be a 500 error. So we set about trying to look at our set up application insights to try and get some instrumentation on what was going on. Long and short of it, last week that just wasn't working. I think I was just holding it wrong. I know Phil in the chat room later after the stream, I think the next day, he went and played with getting application insight set up on his own version of the site. And he was able to give me some pointers as to what was going on. So I redid the setup and the deployment of application insights into my Azure App Service. And then after a bit of debugging, so what I found was, if we go over to here and look at the commits and see what I did. So if we scroll down, so one of the first things I did is I attempted to update to a newer version of .NET Core, because the one that it shipped with out the box isn't supported anymore. So I updated to 2.1. Now that's obviously still old, but in terms of just getting things working, this was the highest one that's still technically supported. I updated all the dependencies. I added GitHub Actions to deploy things. I added application insights, so it brought me up to speed with where we got last week, and also with Phil's version. I removed the use of Kestrel. One thing I noticed that when I was playing with it locally was that it had a specific usage of Kestrel here, but now that I've deployed it into Azure, this strictly isn't necessary, and when I'm running it locally, it's running under IIS Express. So I removed that part. The next one was remove the transpiling of JavaScript files. So after a bit of poking around in the dark, really, what I found was that this package reference, which is for Liger Shark Web Optimizer TypeScript, it doesn't work on Azure. This thing here in its current version, and I did try seeing if it was the latest version, and it is, this takes a dependency or a hard dependency on a version of Node that isn't on the Azure App Service. So this thing just flat out doesn't work. So what this thing's attempting to do is it's attempting to look at any source files that are in the www root folder. If they're TypeScript files, it's going to transpile that, if that's the right term. It's going to take that TypeScript and it's going to convert it to JavaScript and make it available for the website. But as it stands, this site doesn't have any TypeScript in it. So this isn't actually needed. And given that this thing was causing the exceptions that we were seeing, I've taken it out. So by just removing the package reference and then also this line here, which is to do the transpile of the JavaScript files, that started making things work. So then I was able to get a basic website up and running. That was what you're seeing here. Then what else I did was, yeah, this was an interesting one. So I don't know if you noticed this on your instance, Phil, but if I go over here and I attempt to, well, that's interesting. Oh, so it's not actually there. I'll have to fix that. So if I were to click on the sign in button here, it's not actually, so hold on, let's do this. Let's get back to the beginning and let's do log out. This is something else I need to fix. I noticed this earlier. So if I log out, so I'm in the application and I've got, so notice now that the edit album thing isn't there. But if I sign in, obviously with the super strong username and password that's there at the minute, you get this edit album button. Now, in the deployed version of the website, that was already there. Even though I wasn't signed in, it was already there. So that obviously caused a problem, because random people on the internet shouldn't be able to make an album. Now, it's authorized behind the username and password, and that username and password at the minute is not particularly strong. Anyone probably can figure it out. That'll be a work in progress. But this thing was always visible, and I couldn't figure out why, because looking at the code, there was a tag helper. So the newest version of ASP.NET has the concept of tag helpers, and this tag helper specifically controls the showing or hiding of certain attributes based on whether the user is currently logged in. The current user context is logged in. So it's this if authorized attribute that you can add to things. So if I then search for the if authorized, then you can see that on the index page, then that form shouldn't be visible if I'm not signed in. However, and this was the however, and I found an entry on Stack Overflow post that helped with this. If I go into the view imports.cshtml, this is where the tag helpers are added. So what was happening was that when I created the project, I created it with gla-trips. Now, during the project creation, that makes everything gla_trips. Don't know why, right? So previously in here, this said gla_trips. Now this thing here needs to be the name of the assembly that the tag helper resides in. However, even though I passed in gla-trips and it changed all of the hyphens to underscores, what it didn't do was change the project name. So it was still gla-trips, therefore the assembly name was gla-trips. So as far as the view imports was concerned, that assembly wasn't there, so it quietly just said, meh, I'm just going to ignore the addition of this tag helpers because that assembly doesn't exist. So what I had to do was I had to come in here and change this to be gla-trips, and as soon as I did that, everything started to light up. So over here, that's why you can't see the login, or that you can't see the edit or upload photos anymore, because this current user isn't signed in. So that was a fun one to trace down. Eventually there was I think I added it into the commit so I can find it again. There was a Stack Overflow post that I've since been in and upvoted, and I'm not signed in so you can't see it, but there was a super helpful comment on here which was saying exactly that. If you created it with super-test, then it changes everything to underscore and things get broken. So that was horrible. Eventually figured that out though. Phil in the chat room saying, after we messaged on Wednesday, Thursday, I removed the TypeScript transpiler like you said, but I was working on the train on my Surface tablet, didn't seem to have .NET Core 2.1, so couldn't run it locally, and then didn't go back to it. Okay, fair enough. Totally understand. Like I say, at some point I want to get up to probably .NET 5, but at this point in time, I'm really just interested in getting the thing working. So what else did I do? I removed the GitHub link that was in the footer because that wasn't needed and was also pointing to the wrong place. I switched the title to gla-trips. I added some VS Code stuff. I added some CDN configuration. I don't know if Matthias is in the chat room, but he's probably going to shout at me because, yeah, I haven't. So this sample application comes with CDN tag helper support. So if we were to go and dig into this and look at developer tools and click on this picture, it's a horrible picture, but we will see that this is coming from cdn-gla-trips. So this picture is being resolved via the Azure CDN, but it's still hosted on the file system of the Azure App Service rather than in Azure Blob Storage, which is probably where I want to put it eventually. But again, in the current state of play, I'm just trying to get things working. So I'm kind of happy enough to leave the files in the file system of the app service at the minute, because what I found was even on subsequent deployments, the files, the folders that are created, they aren't blown away, which was what I was worried about. So the fact that they stay around, I'm happy just now just to work with things and to at some point switch to hosting them on Azure Blob Storage, which I believe is a bit cheaper in terms of where to keep things. And then once that's there, I'll switch the CDN over to point at the Blob Storage rather than my app service, which is where it's currently pointed at. So with all those things done, I'm in a place where I can start to do stuff. And this is where I was hoping to get to about 20 minutes into last week's stream, but as it said, it didn't go very well. So what do we want to do? Now, as I mentioned, this whole thing came about as a result of my eldest child showing a interest in creating a website for all of the castles that we as a family have visited. We just went to another one on Sunday. We did a quick walk around what's called Knock Hill Castle, and it's literally like 5 miles away from us. We drove to it, and then we had a family walk up to and around the castle. It's a ruin. There's not much to see. It's all blocked up, actually. You can't actually get into the castle, which was unfortunate. But we can say we've been to another one. So the idea is that we would record that as an album, because each time we visit a castle, we take photos, we take a family selfie. And what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to write a short description of the album, i.e., where were we, what were we doing, why were we there, and then what I also want to do is I want to record the latitude and longitude of the location of the castle. And what I want to then be able to do is I want to be able to have on the home page here, what I want to have is a map, a Google map or some other map that has markers for each of the albums or each of the places that we visited. And then when you click on it, it then takes you through to the album contents. So rather than having a front page here that is just the thumbnail of the first picture in the album, I want to have a Google Maps widget here with markers on it that when you click on it, takes you through the album. And then it'll have the description, it'll have maybe the date that it was visited, etc., etc., etc. So at the minute, if I get signed in here, so if I go to login, I think, if I sign in here, then at the minute, when I create a new album, let's just call it test, then at the minute, there's only one piece of metadata that is the album, which is the name of the album, and that is used in the URL when you visit it, and then it's put here onto the index page for the album. So what I want to be able to do is I want to augment this edit to include additional fields, and what I want to be able to do, and this is kind of where I was hoping for some input from the chat room, is that everything, so there's no database associated with this website. It's all done just on the file system, because it just, when you create an album, it creates a folder on disk, and when you upload a picture, it saves it on disk, and then those are just enumerated in the file name is what gets shown. So if we go up to here and go into this one, and this one's called Sketches02, because it's literally what the JPEG was called. So what I was planning on doing is for each album, I thought about creating just a JSON file, and that JSON file contains the metadata. And it would just be called something like data.json. So within each album, there's a data.json file, and that will contain the metadata that's associated with the album. So rather than going to the extreme of having a database where I could store that information, I thought I'll just put it onto a file on disk and then read that file and then display that information when someone navigates to the album. So if there's anyone out there listening, does that make sense? It doesn't need to be a particularly snappy website. I'm not particularly worried about high volumes of traffic or anything like that. I just want to be able to easily store the metadata that I am adding to the album, and then be able to recover that and deserialize that when I need to. So does that make sense? And if it does, or if there's no objections, if there's no objections, what I was going to do was I was going to start to augment this form to include additional fields, and then capture that data and store it as a JSON file. I see Adil's just joined the chat room. Hello Adil, how's it going? I hope you are doing well. So yeah, performance-wise, okay, I'm not particularly worried about it being super duper fast, but it does, I mean, loading it from disk is probably still quicker than going to backwards and forwards to a database. So there's that. So I think I'm going to start there. And then if nothing else, I've done all the work in terms of collecting the metadata from the client and then where I put that is really a technical detail once it's there. So this is where we'll start to dig into things a little bit. So Adil's asking for a selfish question, what we're doing. So what we're doing, Adil, is we are creating a website. And that website is going to be for the GLA trips. So GLA is me, G is me, my wife, my child, eldest child, and my second child. And what I am working on is a little website to record the current. So we've been going through a series of visiting castles recently. You may have seen on Twitter where I've been posting pictures and selfies of us visiting castles. And when I mentioned this to my eldest child, she was quite interested in being able to create a website that captures where we visited and showing the photos. And then I mentioned to her that we could probably put a little map widget together with markers of where all the castles are. So what I'm trying to do is put the framework in place for capturing all of that information and putting it into an easy little website just to be able to record that information. So what I did was I borrowed a template from Mads Christensen that had a couple of issues, and that was the whole of last week's stream was fighting with Azure DevOps, and various other things to eventually get something that would be deployed. And now that I've got it all up and running up on here, so you can go and see it. I'll put it back in the chat room. I put it in the chat room earlier, but I'll put it in there for you as well. Oh, is my internet gone again? I'm seeing intermittent dropped packets. So if I go away, I do apologize, but hopefully you can still hear me. I'll put a link in the chat room to the website as it currently stands. So what I'm going to start working on is extending the ability to add album information to then be able to rehydrate that to show on the website. Everyone can still see and hear me, so that's good. So if I go, and this is where my amazing, and I mean amazing, this is where my amazing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is going to come into play. But effectively, what I want to do is, so right now, if we go back to this page, in this edit, there's an album name. So we need a little bit more information than that. So I'm going to add in a new input field here. So I'm going to say input is going to be type text. Its name is going to be description. I can type. Its ID is going to be description also. The ARIA label is going to be, ARIA label is for helping with screen readers, etc. So we're going to put that in. I'm having a real trouble typing today. This is going to be the album description. Placeholder is going to be what appears in the text box when it doesn't have anything contained within it. So that's going to be album description. And then I'm going to say that this is not going to be a required field. I have got an extra R in description. So I do, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Adil, appreciate it. So with that done, what I should then be able to do is I should be able to go into the method where we post to when we're creating a new album, which is in here. So at the minute, it just takes a single parameter, which is the name. I'm going to add in a new one that is the description. If I set a breakpoint there and run the website, what we should hopefully find is that rather than having just a single input text box, we should have two. So we've got the original one, which was the album name, and then we've now got a new one, which is the description. So if I say test and testing here, when I click new album, we should hopefully hit that breakpoint, which we did. And then if we hover over name, we'll see that that is test. And if we hover over description, and it's testing. So that's me taking the information from the form on the client page, submitting that back into ASP.NET Land. So then in C# I can do something with that. And what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to serialize that to a JSON object and then store it in the album folder that's just been created. So that's what's happening here. So right here, the path is being created. So what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to use a JSON object, which is the new album. So let's see about doing that. Because on my album object, if I F12 on here, the only piece of information that the album currently has is its name property. So if I extend this to have a new thing that is the description, now we're going to want a getter and a setter because we're going to want to set that. Instructions unclear in the drawing image have deleted half the internet. Are you referring to the picture that's currently up there? Yeah, that's that was the one picture that I could find that didn't have kind of any personal information on it, so I thought I'll just put it up. But that's obviously from the 12 Days of Christmas drawing that I did eons ago. So that's why that's there. Where were we? So we're on the album class. I've now got a description property. So if I go in here, what I should then be able to do is I should then be able to say that my albums.description is equal to the description that was passed in. Okay, so we've now got that. Then once we've done that, I want to be able to serialize that to an object. And I'm going to do that using the system.net.json class, system.text.json class. So using system.text.json. Now that's a question. Is that a package? Do I need a package reference to use that? Probably do. Or do I? Hyper namespace JSON. I thought that. Oh, is that in a different? Don't. System.text.json. There is one. So is that in the .NET Core app? Okay, perfect. So what we should be able to do is go to package reference. Should be able to not use the latest data. Let's use this one. Make sure that that's still, yes it is. If I copy that, then we should be able to go into the project, which is here. Just put that in there. That should hopefully store all the bits. And then that using statement should hopefully light up. It did, or it's not lighting up, but it's no longer red text. So in here, what we should be able to do is we should be able to use JSON serializer.serialize album and album. Now we need to put that somewhere, but for now, let's just put that into a variable, see what it does. See if that gives us a serialized JSON string of the album with its name and its description. Back over to our running website. That one's closed off. So if we go in here and say test and testing again, and we say new album, and over here, we let this run, then we hit, the shortcut keys won't work, but if we hit F10 here, this text string has got name, description, testing. It's got all the other properties, so we might have to play with that a little bit to say what we actually want to serialize out to system.text.json. But for now, what does depth mean, ideal? What does that mean? What are you referring to there? I'll wait for a response on that before I go too much further. Might wait for a response, assuming you're typing. You can control depth of JSON to serialize in PowerShell anyway. Helps you pick only part. So part of it is that. So all of these ones that I'm seeing are top level properties. So you've got name, description, URL name, link. So all of those are actually top level objects. So if we go back to here and hit F12, then they're all at the same level. So it's not a case of them being nested. But in system, so in, let me get this right, in Newtonself.json, you can control which properties are included in the serialization process by adding attributes or adding attributes to the properties that you don't want to be serialized. And now I'm assuming that you can do something similar with the system.text.json, which is now included within the .NET framework without having to pull in Newtonsoft.json. So for now, I'm just going to say that I'm just going to leave it as is, because really what I'm interested in just now is just knowing that I can serialize and deserialize the information to where I want it to be. I'm not too concerned about it at the minute. Okay, so with that done, if I go back over to here, then there was an example that I found where it was serializing to disk. So let's grab that code and I'm going to just modify it. So this is code that I've pulled from the sample application. I'm going to put this into the chat room as well, just so that everyone can see where I'm at. So there's a sample in there where the file name, now the file name, I'm going to just call it data.json, is what I'm going to serialize to. Oh, that's using the new using construct I don't actually like very much. So I'm going to change that to put that within an actual using statement. And then we'll put that in there. That's then going to complain about not being an asynchronous method. Now I think I might just be able to do that. And let's wrap that in a task. See if that runs. That's going to need a using to, oh, that's interesting. Page model file is a method which is not set, which is not valid in the given context. It's getting confused by something because that should be a system.file. I'm back to that one. So this is what we wanted to do. So we're going to serialize this guy. I'm going to grab this and put this into, sure we don't break it. We're going to serialize asynchronously to that, and we're going to use stream that we're contained within. Okay, so far so good. And then we're going to dispose of that stream. think that's just complaining because of I think it's just this is interesting. Why does create stream suddenly not have a dispose? Oh, it's maybe only got the dispose async on the later framework, so that doesn't need to be in await. Dispose. Okay, so that's another good reason to update to the latest for a different day. So let's set a breakpoint there and see if this works. So if this works, in theory, where we are running this website from, which is in C, GitHub, organizations, Git13 OS, trips, bin, debug, netcore app. Here, I think, is where we should start to see things being created, although maybe not. There is an album there. Oh, that's a fair point, Nils. Because I changed. Yes, no, you're right. Because the create stream is the subject of the using. Yes, no, you're absolutely right. So we shouldn't need that. We can go back and change that actually then. So if we go in here, then what we should be able to do, let's take that breakpoint off and go in here. So the file name is, oh, I didn't do that properly. So it's going to create a random, I should have done that with this path. Change that. So the file name, we're going to call this metadata file name is going to be equal to path.combine path. These are, I'm going to have to go back and change these names at some point. So we're combining the path, which is to the albums folder, with the name. No, that's not what I want it to go to, is it? That's no, because that's going to take it to the wrong. No, that's right. So this is the album name. So it's albums and then test1, and then within test1 we want data.json, which is what this thing is here. So we can copy this and put this into here, and then as Nils correctly pointed out, that create stream is now contained within this using statement. Explicit dispose isn't needed, and like I say, I personally prefer capturing it within the using statement. Let's try that. Let's see where we get to. So let's do this again. So test1, oh, it is creating them. Let's test2 then. Test2, testing, create new album, back into my breakpoints, and then the metadata file name is albums. Oh, it's www.root, so that's why I couldn't find it. Oh, it doesn't have a www. Oh no, that's up to here. And here, albums test2. Okay, so far so good. Now we step over this, and bad things happen. I think, yeah. A possible object cycle was detected. This can either be due to a cycle if the object depth is larger than the maximum allowed depth of 64. That sounds scary. Or, interesting. So did it put anything into here? It's created the file, but it hasn't put any data in it. What happened there? we've got a nested object on the go here. So albums, got a list of photo. Oh, does a photo have an album? I bet a photo has an album. It does. So we've got a wee. I think what's going on here is the file was created on file.create. The file was created? Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. So then the file itself was, so what Nils is pointing out is that the file was created on this line, and then the stream is then the stream that is that file is what's being serialized into when the album is passed in. Now, what's happening here, I think, is that the album has a list of photos. The photo has a album, and I think there's a little loop going on, even though we don't have a photo. So that was my question earlier. I don't know if you heard that, Nils. I knew, so this is system.text.json. So does that attribute work with system.text.json? System.text.json, JSON ignore. Oh, it does. Even better. Okay, so this is what I was hoping to find, but I didn't know if it existed. So I'm going to say on this one, perfect. So Nils has put a link to it in the chat room. So I'm going to say JSON ignore on this one. Perfect. But the minute I really just want the name and the description, so let's take some of these off as well. Absolute path, yeah, I don't necessarily care about that at the minute. Photos, no, it's really just the metadata of the photo itself that I'm interested in. And then paginator, no, I don't want that. And then paginator, no, don't want that. And then public void, that's a void. Everything else was, okay, so that should be that. So if I run this now, I don't have the serialized text anymore, or the string. Let's see if this helps though. Then let's do test 3, testing album. Back in Visual Studio Code. Oh, much better. Much better. So if I let that run through, then we get redirected to test. And now if we look in our test 3 folder, oh, it's got stuff in it. So if we open up this, then we've got test 3 and description testing. So we've been able to collect that data and stick it into a JSON file. What we need to be able to do now is when we hydrate that text, so when we come back into this page where we're writing out test 3, I want to be able to also write out the description. So let's see if we can do that. So back over to here, and where we find the word upload photos, which is in here, what I want to be able to do is here. There's an h2 that is the model.album.name. So if I naively put a h4 and do no idea what item scope or item type are. I have no idea what they are. But I'm wondering if I could just do model.album.description. And I'm wondering if that will be enough to output the description onto the page. Let's find out. So if we go to test3, which has a description, so is it just hidden? Let's work on the assumption that it's there, but it's not there. So if we go into here and an H4, but it doesn't have any values in it. So obviously it hasn't it won't have hydrated it. Never hydrated it. Yes, absolutely. So Nils is in the chat room. Keep me honest. So what we need to know is where is it finding that album information. So most likely there's something will be newing up an album. So that's where we created it. So this must be where it's reading it. So there's a call to get album, which is taking in the album path. From there, it is then getting information, all the photos, and then it is adding the photos that it's found to the album. So this is where we can hydrate it then. So at this point, we should be able to go to, I'm just going to check to see the name of this. It is just deserialize. So at this point, what we want to be able to do, I think, is we want to be able to do, so that album path, actually, let's see what that album path is, because we should be able to infer from that. Oh, hold on. What's Berg Cockham? What's that? I like the idea though. Suggestions for places to visit. I like it. Berg Cockham. Oh, what's that? That looks. What on earth is that? Panorama of Cockham with the Cockham Imperial Castle. That looks amazing. Was this beside you? I'm going to go back and look for images of this instead. Oh, wow. That's like something straight out of a fairy tale. That looks awesome. Can you visit that? Like, can I go up and go into it? It's where. That's amazing. I would happily go and visit that. Okay, I'm gonna have to. I'll talk to my daughter about it. But yeah, I like the suggestion actually of suggestions for castles to visit. I love it because, like I say, I don't know if you heard the. Oh, where is it? Hold on. Oh, I don't know what I've done with it. But we've got a map that is all the castles in Scotland, and there's 735 of them. Now, we're never going to see all 735, but I just like the idea of keeping a track of the ones that we have seen, and it's the ones that we've seen as a family. That's the distinction as well. Yeah, sorry, I was going to go and hit F5 on this to see if that album path is to where I want it to be. And if it is, I will test to see if there's a data.json file. And if there is, I will load it up. And so this album path is, come on, album path is to that folder. Perfect. So what we want to do here then is say var meta data file name is equal to path.combine album path, and let's just hard code it again just now. This will need to get refactored at some point. And then we'll say if file.exists metadata file name, then we'll do some stuff, and that stuff is going to be, would be neat to have an interact. Yes, so that's effectively, so you might not have heard that at the part, but the part that my eldest child's face lit up was, let's be able to have a map that is, these are all the places that we visited. So this is why I'm extending the metadata, because one of the pieces of metadata that I want to add to the album is the latitude and the longitude, so that we could add the entries of where we've been to then on a map say we've been there, and then clicking on that will take you to the album and the information of the when we visited, who was there, etc, etc. That way you can add a pin. Yes, exactly that. So that's where we want to get to. So I've already spiked out the usage of Google Maps to put a pin on a map. That part's easy. I just need to have the data. So this is what I'm really trying to get at here, is be able to collect the data for each album, and that will represent a pin on the map, and then blah, we're done. Nils is saying, sounds great. Like, show a Bing map. Yes, exactly that. Yeah. So front page of the Google Maps is what I've spiked out, just because that was what I've played with roughly before, and it was really simple to get up and running with. Bing Maps, I'm assuming you can do the same with that, but that's what I spiked out anyway. So now that we have that, we should be able to say var album data is equal to JSON serializer Why is that? Oh, because I won't have that yet, will I? So that will need using system.text.json. Then we come down here. Then we should be able to do deserialize album from, do we just give it the path? Oh no, we just give it the file.read all text from the metadata file name. And then if that exists, what we'll want to do is say album.description. Well, this is where we'd really want to map it onto there. Is equal to album data.description. Okay, so if we do that, and let's leave that breakpoint. Nils is saying you can. Tested both for a little project about 10 years ago. Bing was easier to use. Google had better results. Is returning latitude for had better results for returning latitude and long for a given. So it's really, my intention was that when I created the album, we would already have figured out the latitude and longitude that we wanted to use. So it's not really that I want to be able to find the latitude and longitude. It's I want to be able to just be able to type it in and then store that and then plot that on a map. Is kind of what I was getting to. So this is the test album. Got to put the shop. Got to what? Got to go to the shop, maybe. Catch on a bit. No worries, Dinoxide. So F10. Pop to the shop, even better. There we go. So metadata file name will be there. So this one won't exist for the test album, so that's fine. But if we come back through here again for test 1, it won't have anything either. Let's put a breakpoint in here. Test 2 shouldn't have anything. Oh, test 2 does. Oh, but it was empty. We should probably handle that a little bit better, because when I step over this, this is going to blow up, isn't it? Yeah. The input does not contain any JSON tokens. So we maybe need to handle that a little bit better. But for now, if I go up to test 2 and I just delete that data.json, and let's run that again. So we cheated a little bit there, but if we do this, do this, do this, this should hopefully be test 3. Essentially, that's all I need to do. Yeah. So Nils is suggesting we should do a try catch, which is what we'll need to do. Yeah. So if I do file.exist, it is there this time. So now if I deserialize that into an album. Oh, hold on. Each parameter in constructor void, I think we will need a parameter. We will need a parameterless. Still can't use it. We will need a constructor that doesn't have any parameters on the album class, I think. So if we go back up here, yeah, we're going to want to have public album. As in like a DTO is what you're suggesting there? I was hoping to just be able to do that and tell it to not have to worry about it. Because there, I see what you're getting at, because let's take that one off. Well, I kind of thought that those were, I never checked, but I sort of assumed that some of them were, calculated properties, so they were inferred, but maybe I'll need to go back and check that. So that worked, obviously. So now the description is currently null. The description on this is testing. So now if I let that run through, and we go back over here and we look at the test 2, obviously didn't have anything, but test 3, oh, now it's got a description. Cool. Oh, we're almost finished. It's almost complete. So what Nils is suggesting, and I think he's right. So I think what we need then is if we go over here and we look at, let's create a new class here called album metadata.cs. And then in here, if we go to album, let's take this guy off. We won't need that. And take this description off. This can go into our public class album data. That can go in there. Go back to album a second. So this don't need these JSON ignores anymore because we'll take them off. Are there? We're no longer going to be serializing this guy. We'll just serialize the metadata of it. And then the constructor could actually maybe take metadata object to then make it available. Hold on. So the album still needs a description. So I talked myself back into putting that on. So description is still going to be needed otherwise. But we could maybe just make that a getter. And then what we might be able to do here is might be able to add another overload on here that is public album string absolute path album collection count, and then keep it the same. And then in here, we'll have an album data. Call it metadata. Then here we'll do this, and then here we can do this, and then here we'll say absolute AC, and then null. What am I doing? Use the Highlander principle. Oh, that's a new one on me. What's the Highlander principle? Oh, as in there can only be one. I thought that's where you were going to go. I wasn't sure. No, hold on. What am I doing wrong here? That's not what I want to do though, is it? What am I missing? How come a complete mind meld? Mind melt. Go. Sorry. See, it's so easy to forget things when you are trying to talk at the same time. So let's do this, and then in here we will say if metadata not equal to null, then we will say this is where I'd want some sort of mapper, but indeed, thank you, and I'm very glad that you are. Description is equal to metadata dot description. So for now, we'll just keep this as a explicit mapping of those properties. If I do that, and then we search again for new album, then in this one, we were passing in guy. This is on the onCreate. So really then what we want to do here, we want to change this a little bit. We'll say var album metadata is equal to new album data. It's album metadata dot description is equal to description. That can then come off of there, and what we'll pass in here is the metadata, and then new up a new one over here. Then we want to move this guy. Say, oh, no, we don't. Okay. So in here, we're going to say album, we're going to have to rename that to be metadata. Album metadata. Then we're going to say var album equals, I don't like doing this, and that's not going to work. Album, no, that's going to be that, else album equals album. What are you complaining about? Cannot convert from album. Oh, I see what I did. Album metadata. Okay. There's at least one other place where I did album, which was in here. So this is now album data. Okay, so a bit of a long-winded way, but hopefully this shouldn't have broken anything. No. Abort. Problems. Album here, metadata. What were we doing here? This was us serializing the album metadata. So when we put this into here, oh, we need an instance of it, but we have that from here, so that's this one. So that is that one. But the question becomes, when I created that, why are you still complaining? Cannot convert from album. This from here. I need here. Here. Well, that's clearly not going to work. Doesn't really help, does it? Cut that here. Okay, so I'll make that a little bit more consistent. Do that differently. So what we're saying is blah blah blah. I think we've done that one, and then cannot convert from album metadata, album to album metadata. Oh, ask to better. Okay, fixed it. So into here, file exists, album metadata. We get a new one. That album metadata has a description, and then we create a new album, and that album has a description that is testing. Happy days. So we come back into here and we say S3. Ha, it's there. Go back, S2 doesn't have anything. Happy days. Right. So now that we've got that, what we need to do is to start extending it. So the album metadata, I was envisioning things like date time, which is visited. It's a terrible name. Get and set, and then I need public string latitude get and set public string long how do you spell that? Longitude latitude, longitude. There we go. Getting set. Oh, that's not spelled right. So visited. The description visited latitude and longitude. So that gives us the basics for the information that I want to capture, right? And then, assuming that I capture all of those things, let's go back to here a second. Delete all these extra tests. Just have the one. So then I'm going to need to borrow some of these and put them into the album class. So let's put these into here. There. That's going to want system. System. Right. And then in here, we would say that visited equals metadata.visited, latitude equals latitude, longitude, metadata.longitude. Obviously that, in fact, let's just get rid of that one as well, because it's not going to have that information in it. So it's going to fail. Well, it might not fail, it just wouldn't set it properly. With all of those things in play, if I go back to my HTML, where I added the one that takes me to there, yeah. So in here, I want to borrow this one. So that's the visited, longitude, latitude. I think. Yeah. So this is going to be name, visited, latitude, longitude, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, album, date of visit. It doesn't really make sense here, but date of visit, let's call it that. Album latitude doesn't really make much sense either, but you get the idea. Can't type. Album latitude, album latitude. Album here, and then placeholder date. Now, obviously, these input fields will probably need to change because they're not just going to be text files, or they're not just going to be text fields. I'm probably going to want a calendar picker of some description. So then when we come in here, I'm going to say album metadata dot visited is equal to visited. That's not going to have a value. It's likely not going to have a date time. So let's just make visited. We'll try parsing it. String latitude, string longitude. We're going to need to do a date time dot parse from visited. That's horrible. Don't ever do that. Dot latitude is equal to latitude, album metadata dot longitude is equal to longitude. So far so good, I think. And then when we come in here, go into the album constructor, which was over, where's my album constructor? Here we had our mapping, which was what was done there. Okay, if I run this, so what time zone and things again? So testing, date of visit, we're going to say was let's do 07/12/2021 at the minute. Longitude -1, 1. No idea where that is in the world. So let's create it anyway. So datetime.parse is date. Oh, hold on. Doesn't really matter, does it? What did that do? Okay. So far so good. So if we come back to here and do what we did before in our this one, I'm gonna 1, 2, 3 visited, latitude, longitude. Assuming that we have all of this information, we have the basis for the creating of a map. Because we would have all the information that we wanted. Go. This is coming together quite nicely. Obviously, there's some horrendous things in here that we need to change. The other thought I had was I thought about creating a single JSON object that is. See, I don't know if that makes sense or not. What was going through my head there is I would want to be able to ask for, so when I eventually on my homepage put my calendar widget, I want to be able to request all of the current latitude and longitude for all the albums. But we already have an album collection, and that album collection will have the lat long values. But what I'm wondering is whether I just want to store on disk the lat and longs for the markers and just request that from the client side and say just give me the JSON. It would mean keeping that single JSON file up to date when an album changes. I think that's okay. What we haven't done so far is being able to edit an album. That would be something for a different day. And obviously when we delete an album, well, that's interesting. What happens if I delete the album? Is it going to delete the data.json? I assume it will. Let's test that actually. If I delete this, it's just going to delete that. Oh, look at that. So we don't have to worry about that tidying up because it's just going to delete the directory. So what do we want to do next? Where do we want to go next? Next, Next, we want to be able to, let me have a quick look to see if I can find a sample that I was putting together for the Google Maps I was using. Let me see if I can find that. Recent. I still got it. Looks like I might. Looks like I might. The only thing I didn't know, and maybe Nils, you might know the answer to this one, is that in the Google sample application, because everything's done on the client side, I had to put my API key directly into the index.html file. Now that felt a little bit wrong because that meant that anybody would be able to use that API key for hitting the Google API that I've just created. But I think I'm able to restrict the usage of that API to certain URLs. So the question then becomes, how does one do that? Google. See if I can remember what I did. Login. That was 10 years ago, Nils is saying. I'm fairly sure that there was a way to restrict. So I'm obviously not showing this part on the screen because I don't really want this to go out on the stream. But there was on dashboard. I followed a link. All right. Maybe just this website. Introduction. This is exactly what I followed. So how did I get started this? Get an API key. And there's a restrict. That's under credentials. So let me take this. So this was the article that I was following. Why is it that when you are waiting for the GitHub pages build, it always takes longer than you expected? Very good question. It's a very, very good question. I don't have an answer, unfortunately. If I go into my Google Cloud Console, then in here under credentials, there is an API key, which is that the one I'm using? That is indeed the one that I'm using. So if I click on that, so I'm in that link that I sent out. Let me just bring this up into here. And there's a step 3 down here, which is to get an API key. And then in here, I think there was, yeah, to prevent quota theft, secure it using this. So using API keys, creating an API key, which is what I did, and then I want to secure it to only allow access to it from a certain URL. So by default, the API key that you'll create is unrestricted, which means anybody can use it. But then, if I say, oh no, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, well, I'm going to restrict it those to be just data that, save, and then reduce the impact of a compromised API key. Yeah. If I go back in here. Oh, I see. So there's another section that is application restrictions. An application restriction controls which websites, IP addresses, or applications can use your API key. So I'm going to say HTTP referrers, and I'm going to say that the referrer, or referrer, I think is going to want to be this guy. If I copy this, and I'm going to put that into here. Like this, and I'm going to say done. I think. Oh no, hold on. Let's do this. Say done. Okay. What that should allow to happen is that should allow me to put the API key into the stream without it being abused by anyone and running up a big bill on my system. I think. So let's try it, shall we? So what I want to then be able to do is I want to be able to grab this. I kind of have to. I kind of have to. Well, it's going to get checked into source control, is what I mean. I mean, if you look at the example, then the way that you set it up is here's the HTML. So the way you set the HTML up is here's a script tag, and here's the div that you put the map into, and your map contains that API key. So that's getting put into. That's what I'm saying. So it's going into the public. It's on the client side. It's the client it's from the browser that these requests are being made. So that's why I wanted to lock it down before I put it into the stream, so that once I put it into the stream, it can only requests using that API key can only come from this website, meaning that other folks shouldn't be able to use it. I think I've done that part correctly. I think. Because what it said was, so how do you restrict your API key to specific websites? Use an HTTP referrer to restrict the URLs that can use the API key. Here are some examples: specific URL with an exact path, blah, a URL with a single domain, blah, any URL with a single subdomain, blah, blah, blah. So I've restricted it to just this website. Now that might change if I put a custom domain name onto this app service, but for now, I'm just going to use the one that I got for free with the site. So with that done, if I go over to here and I grab this and I look at my stop this website and we go to my index.chtml, and at the minute we've got an albums, so I'm just going to put in my map with my script tag, right? Can't see all of it, so I'm security through obscurity. So with that done, there's a little bit of CSS, but that's fine. And then there's a JavaScript file that has some stuff in it. So in my www root, in my JavaScript, I'm going to create a new one that is called map.js. And then here, I'm going to put some hard-coded stuff that I put in before. So this is what I want to replace with grabbing all the latitude and longitudes from the so this is literally straight out with that tutorial that I followed. So then if I go into here and add another script into the top here, where would we want to put that? Minute. Question: when a Brit says ace on something, what should I make of it? That's a good thing. Depending on the context, I would say that's a good thing. What was the context? Now I'm just going to put this in here a second. It was called admin.js. Where's it referenced? /js. I thought. So /js/map.js. Right. So if I save that and run that, I was showing him this, and his only response was ace. I would say that that's a positive response. Yes. Farm Pi running Octo Farm on your Raspberry Pi. Yes, I would have said that that was a positive response. Yes. Why did that not do anything? Tools, dev tools, Google Maps API error. I expected that to happen. I did. Because it's locked. That's a good test actually. But if I were to publish this, then at the very least we would see the Maps API appear and then see if it works from that one. So let's do that. So let's do just this one. So let's add in, I don't think there's anything. Yeah, so let's do this and let's do, don't want all that stuff just yet, but let's do this part. So stage selected ranges, and let's do, I probably should have created an issue for this. So let's do github.com/get30 trips issues, add Google Maps API integration to allow showing a map with information about the location of each album. This should contain, or this should show the lat and long of the location of each within the collection. And click on a marker, it should take you through to photos of album. Okay, so this is just ask submit new to. So this is 6. We're going to say still testing of Google Maps creation. Zada1 has followed. Hello Zada1, thank you very much for the follow. This doesn't actually do much yet, but just wanted to verify that the restrictions placed API key are working as expected. Let's give that a try. Hello Zada1, welcome to the stream. And then if I come over here and do a git push origin, that should trigger a... So what you said there, Maurice, Martin suggested the same thing. So I would see that as a potential future enhancement of the website, but for now wasn't planning on doing that. So the majority of the photos that we've taken or we take are just with the iPhone. So the long and lat would be in the XF information, yes. So I should be able to get that information, but at the minute I'm happy it being a manual effort to put that information in. But a future enhancement might do exactly that, yes. But this is the kind of thing that could literally grow arms and legs. But what I'm trying to limit it to at the minute is really eldest child showed an interest in even thinking about what a website is. So I wanted to get the very basics up and running so that I could show her how she could input the data and then see it on the website and then be able to upload the photos that myself and my wife had taken while we've been on the trip. I have done both of those things, yes. It's one of my biggest regrets of the trip that I did when I went to China. I didn't have a phone that was capable of that at the time because it was quite a while ago, but I would have loved to have had a photo with GPS data taken at kind of each point along the wall so that I would have been able to track the walk that I did. But unfortunately, I didn't. I don't have that information, which is a real shame. Might have to go back another day and do the same trek again. So assuming that this deployment works, we should then have a basic map widget. I thought, say, if I'd thought about it more, I would have done something like that, but it wasn't to be. I was actually lucky to get my photos back because both of the XD cards that I had at the time failed on the way back. I had to do a recovery of the card in order to get the information back because it was broken. Now, that's either not worked or it's not published yet. Huh. your site URL. That should already be authorized. That should already be authorized. Why would that not work? It was a Fujifilm camera that I had at the time. So it used an XD card as well. Why? I mean, I can put this explicit one in, but I would have thought that what I have in there just now would have been enough. But let's give it a try. Let's back when SD wasn't the standard and you had 10 different, exactly that. So we're getting closer. Invalid value stack error at Google APIs, map libraries weekly. Done. So did it find the utils admin? Did I not add the map.js? I thought I did. So should this not have a, should have a map.js reference? Oh. I can't find the map.js, so why, where did I put that? Map.js should be under did you commit? Thought I did. Yeah, I thought I did. What did I put in the commit? Index.html. Yes. So something's not quite right there. But I'm wondering if it's something to do with the. You did not add it. How did I not add it? Oh, the layout. Oh, sorry, you're right. My bad. You're talking about this one, which has. Hold on. I'm confusing myself now. It's not showing up as a change. That's there. Thank you very much, Maurice. Appreciate it. Add map.js into top level page. This may need to later, but for now, it is good place. Okay, let's push this again. So I'll need to wait for that. Excuse me. We'll need to wait for that deployment. But assuming that works, what we should be able to do is start to tinker with the map.js that I've created. So in there, currently, it's very naive at the minute because I was just hard coding data. But so in here you'll see that I've hard coded this location. So this is a location of Slane's Castle, which is one of the first ones that we went to visit. So the idea here would be, rather than hard coding this, make a call to the website. The website returns the JSON blob of here are all the latitude and longitudes of the excuse me, of the markers they want to add to the map. And no, I think I'm good. I think I'm good. So, so yeah, rather than hard code this, make a request to the website, get the top level information back about all of the albums that are currently on the site, return things like the name, which will be most likely will be Slane's Castle, and then the href, which is when you click on it, that's where you want it to go to. So at the minute this is going to go to obviously a non-existent site, but the idea is simple in the sense that I would then be able to direct someone who clicks on the map to the photos that go with it. So while that deployment's happening, we can start to think about the next thing, which is I need to be able to call a method on the website that has, which is an API endpoint really, and then be able to return JSON data. Now, I know how to do that in an ASP.NET MVC site that has controller actions, but the makeup of this site is using Razor pages. So how does one do an API endpoint Razor pages? Or do you intermix the two? Use ASP.NET Core Razor pages as API endpoints. It seems like it is something that at least one other person in the world's done. So I wonder. I'm going to put this into the chat as well so that it's a record of it. We're going to whip up a simple Razor page application with some jQuery interactivity built into it. The jQuery will call another specialized Razor page to act as a mini API, a source. I think that's exactly what we want. How about a simple rendering of the okay. I see what you're saying. Well, let's come back. Let's hold that thought. See if we've now got a map. It didn't throw an error, but it also didn't give me a map. Where's my map? Init map. The script is there. And it has stuff in it. So it's got my init map function contained within it. So that should have rendered. That should have put something on the page. because my map is here. Oh, is it just like a height and width thing? Is it? It should be there. Oh, would it be the missing CSS that I didn't include in it? Hold on. What was in the CSS? Oh, surely not. Surely not. Where's the map? See, don't. How did you even know that, Nils? I think the CSS file that I didn't upload has the height and width on it. So the containing div does, but the parent one doesn't. So I think what we need on here is height. Let's just hard code it just now. Height equals 400 pixels and width equals 100%. That's not going to work. Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. Oh, there it is. So, I take this off. So this one is a marker at the Latin long for Slane's Castle. Now, obviously, it's a bit off in terms of where Google Maps think it is, but this is a lat long taken directly from the Slane's Castle website. Now, the idea is that once this is up and running, obviously this will be populated with all the markers of all the castles that we have been to as a family. So then, when you click on that, it would take you to the album. Now, obviously, that's broken because that information is just hard coded at the minute. But oh no, obviously my height and width is gone again. But going back to what you were saying, how about a simple rendering of the JSON data in a script tag? So I think that would work, wouldn't it? So what you're saying there really is, if I go back to, I don't think we'll have time for it just tonight, but if I go back to my index.cshtml, you're saying construct a script tag in, because this thing already has the album collection in it. So within each, I could literally do a for each album within the for each album within the album collection, grab the latitude and longitude and the description to then allow the creation of a JSON blob, which could then in the JavaScript be constructed to create a marker for each one. This is effectively what you're suggesting, isn't it? So rather than calling an API, we're already rendering the page, so why not just put that page on? Why not put that data onto the page as it's being rendered? Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like you say, it's not. It would limit the ability to share that information, but obviously I don't necessarily think I want to be able to share that information. So yeah, I think that will work. I'll take that. I'll do that as the next step. So as a point of, just to wrap up where we got to tonight, where did we get to tonight? that's not something there, but we went through. So as a recap, we went through everything that was the shambles of the stream from last week. We went through all the things that I did to actually get the thing working. Then we started looking into how we could extend the album that we're creating within this photo gallery to include some additional metadata, and we are capturing that metadata into a data.json file that we're storing within the album itself, and we're just rehydrating that JSON data when we get the albums back. And now what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to take that metadata, which is going to include the latitude and longitude of the location of the photos. And what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to populate that onto a Google map with a marker. Now originally I'd thought about just having a API endpoint that returns the JSON blob, but Nils in the chat room has suggested that potentially that would be better served by just rendering it directly into the Razor page and then just loading that from, or using that on the Java in the JavaScript itself. So I think I should be able to do that. I'll need to have a wee play with doing that in JavaScript land, because JavaScript is not really my forte, I'll be honest. But I'll give it a go. And there's been some suggestions in the chat room about how this can be extended to make it a bit more functionality. But for the first minimum viable product, what I'm looking for is the ability to control the creation of an album, uploading of photos, which I can already do, and then being able to map those albums into a map. And then that's what I can take to my eldest child and say, look, let's start plotting all of the locations of the castles that we've been to visit in Scotland so far as a family. So that's that. I think, what's this now? And because there were not enough sidetracks in the stream, oh, what's this? What have you sent me? Let me copy this. Is this safe for stream? Before you continue, what's this you've sent me? I don't think I've pasted the right thing, have I? Let's hold on. Let's take this. Copy. Put it over here. No, it is. Scroll down and accept. Hold on. Oh, is this the same one? Hold on. Is this the same one that you sent me before, Nils? So is this the? Oh, this is another one. So where's this one? Where are we? This is where you got married, dude. That's quite impressive as well. That looks amazing. Right next to the. So okay, so you've got Berg Cochem and Berg Permont. I want to say Permont. Oh, what are you sending me now? Reese, I think you go home. What are you sending me? These are castles in the. Hold on. I'm going to go with Acceptorin. Is that what I need to do? Amsterdam Castle. Oh, wow. Oh, it's got a moat and everything. Oh, that's awesome. That looks quite impressive, to be fair. So much more than a castle. Come and check it out. So the one. So part of me. So the one that I really like is the one that we've just been to, and my eldest really liked it as well. Slane's Castle. It's a ruin, but it's literally right on the edge of a cliff. and you can wander around this whole thing. It's completely open plan. You wander through it. It's a massive state, and this turret here, there's a staircase on the inside that you can wander up. And my eldest child took one look at it and said, "Nah, not going up there, Dad." Youngest child, I couldn't stop her going up. She was like, she bolted up. I ran up the stairs after her because it's one of these really, really small spiral staircases, and we got all the way to the top. And this little window here, you can look out of. It was just, it's an amazing slot. So that's that one, and the other one that I really like, and we've been to this one. We haven't been to this one as a family, but again, it's another ruin, but it's right on a cliff edge. It's just this mound of rock off the east or the northeast coast of Scotland, and you have to walk down the side of it here. There's one entrance. It takes you up through these entrances through the caves, basically, and you get up onto the top level surface. It's just amazing. It really is. So we haven't taken the kids to that one, but we're going to, because we want to go back. So Lynn and I went to this one, but so we don't have anything, or we don't have castles. We have castles that are still active castles, but I want to go and visit this. I think you showed me that. I really do like the idea of seeing the ruins and kind of being able to wander around it and kind of put your own thoughts into it. It's just amazing. This one is amazing. If you have, I don't think you maybe been. I don't think either of you have been to Scotland. If you ever come for a visit, there's like a castle within my area. There's castles everywhere. But Nils is saying not many cliffs in the middle. That's fair. I'm right on the coast, so there's lots of these castles. Dunotter's got it's got a dungeon that you can walk down into where it used to host prisoners and stuff, and it's just this sprawling. It's just amazing. You should definitely come and visit though if you get a chance. But anyway, thank you for those links. I think I like that suggestion. I'm gonna put this on. Actually, let's do this before I remember. Ability to accept suggestions on castles to visit as suggested. I don't know your handle off the top of my head. I'm going to take a guess as Nils A and Kevin R on stream. I'm going to add that in. If you go to Muder slot, if you have time to go to Narden as well, it's a really nice old city and close to Muder slot. Sweet. Once we manage, so that's the whole thing. Get this COVID thing out of the way, and then yeah, there's lots of places to come and visit. But anyway, that's it for tonight. I'm gonna end it here. But thank you very much for hanging out. Thank you very much for picking up on my mistakes. It's always appreciated. And it's starting to take shape. I'm quite happy where we got to tonight. I need to check in some of this and commit it and push it. But it's starting to come together. And obviously, my colleague at work, who is an amazing CSS, HTML, and JavaScript person, she's going to hate what I've done here. But for me, it's functional at the minute, and I might ask her nicely if she can make it better. But for now, I'm going to say that that's it. So thank you very much, and I will talk to you all again. Thank you very much. Bye bye.